You're listening to Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran Podcast.
Now introducing your host of Every Day's a Saturday USMC Veteran, the one-man show, Brian Roof.
Hey, what's going on, friends and family? Thank you guys so much for joining another great day, another great interview. And yeah, we're getting to the tail end of season 2. We're about ready to wrap it up. We're going to end with about 106 complete interviews from season 1 to season 2. So we've been knocking out quite a bit. So appreciate everybody who has supported the show. Remember, once again, you can go check out the website, edasusmcvet.com. That's where all the old episodes, interviews are. There's also great nonprofits and veteran-owned businesses there as well. And yeah, so also, if you guys are having a bad day out there, hey, man, reach out to someone. Don't be afraid to, reach out to your friends, your family. There's also the Crisis Lifeline for veterans. You can press 1. It's the number's 988. And let's just have a great day out there. All right, we're going to go ahead and get on with our next guest. We won't keep him waiting any longer. He's a badass Marine and doing some amazing things out there still for the community. And I'm happy to have him on and talk all about it. We got Ryan Pavel. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Brian, how you doing? I don't know about a badass. Sometimes maybe bad, sometimes maybe an ass, but maybe not those two together.
Hey, when you're a Marine, you're just a badass. That's just how it goes.
It's good to see. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, man, I'm excited to have you on. And, this is your opportunity to kind of let everybody know who you are, where you grew up, what made you decide to be a badass Marine, and chew on some crayons and tell us what you did while you're in the Marines besides chew on crayons. And, let us know what you got going on today, bro.
Well, look, I mean, I think that perhaps the catalyst for me to join the Marine Corps takes away a little bit, right? It wasn't this I need to be abroad. I need to do these things. I got to defend my country. All that came, as sort of a second and third order. You know what it really was I grew up outside Chicago. The school everybody wanted to go to was University of Illinois. So 17-year-old Ryan applies, right? University of Illinois says, yeah, Ryan, all your friends, your future wife, right? Everybody come on in, right? But Ryan, no, we have no interest in you joining us. That rejection was big. That hit me. That hit me hard.
The college life said no.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? It's there's this wonderful there's this wonderful relationship we have now, Warrior Scholar Project, the organization I have the privilege of leading now, national nonprofit, where one of our partners is U of I. And so we now send student veterans to U of I, and we have this close working relationship. We did this big conference with them over the summer. And it's just, I think about, man, back in 2004, you all rejected me. The
irony of it all, huh?
That's full right.
Well, now you're sitting here sending people to them.
That's right. And I love that. I mean, they were absolutely right. This is the other thing, is they were 100% right to reject me back then. Right. I was, as I tell people, I grew up.
Didn't feel that way back then, but looking back at it, right?
That's right. But here's the thing. Even then, the thing was, it wasn't just like, how dare they reject me? That rejection was really important because I was a very half-assed college applicant, right? It's this idea of what do you do after high school? You go to college, right? I mean, this is I grew up in a nice area, my family went to college, right? My father's a physician. My mother has her master's. And so this is what you do. But I wasn't doing much of anything, right? I was getting last at a lot of cross-country races. That was my best extracurricular, right? Was literally getting last in the fields of high school cross-country races. Getting, I figured out pretty early on. I can get
at least that it probably helped you be first in the Marines, though. Shit, man.
Yeah, there you go. One misconception I had, I thought I was going to come out of boot camp and I was going to be all right. I was going to be jacked. I was going to be something, right? No, I came out in frankly worse shape than when I went in. That's the truth. No, man, but it was that rejection really mattered. That was it was that moment in my life that I look at where, even though it was a half-assed application to go to college right out of high school, had I been accepted, that was the path, right? That was just sort of the obvious thing. You major in, I don't know, English, you write something, you read something. And so I'm deeply thankful for that rejection.
Yeah, well, it led you to a different path. I mean, obviously that door closed and left you to go have to look at other doors and knock on other doors. So
That's right. Well, it's
how did you end up on the recruiter's door?
Well, right. So Staff Sergeant Salas, my recruiter, was very eager to knock on my door. Right. I mean, so this
he
is,
was, ready.
so this was 04, right? And so this was the fall of 04. And so there was a need for some Marines at the time. I'll tell you, one of my favorite Onion headlines came out, I think, a year or two after that, where it said, that the Marine Corps, in light of recent recruitment trends, has decided to change its slogan from the few, the proud to just the Marines, the few. Like, all right, when nail it. So, no, but look, I mean, that was, he was a very persistent recruiter, but he didn't even need to be, right? Because that call came at a time, right? I mean, I think I would hazard a guess that pretty much every 17-year-old in 04 is thinking of some aspect of just like, okay, there is this, what do I do for my country, right? There's a lot of shit that's happening in this world, and I want to make an impact. I want to do something, right? Let's go get these guys.
And the war is going on, at this time for you, right?
Yeah. Things are, I mean, this is just what people are thinking about, right? It's just like, it's in the conversations. And so I'm floating through high school and kind of, phoning it in. You get this rejection, and then suddenly you start paying attention to this other voice that says, man, like, this is the news is all about, right? Okay, this is post-invasion, right? And this is, you have all these things that are happening in Iraq, Afghanistan, what's going on there? In 04, right? It's kind of, well, what is happening? What isn't happening? And then the recruiter called, and I tell you, like, he didn't have to recruit me. It was like, at that point, he made the call, and I was ready to go. I was 17, and I'm an only child, and so my parents had to sign the paperwork, right? And so that was a fun conversation of, well, I was going to go to college, right, and just pursue sort of the standard safe route. And how I've never talked about joining the military. Well, I actually want to go to the Marine Corps right after I graduate from high school. Can you please sign this paper?
Now, and how did that go with both your parents went to college?
Yeah, both of them, right? I mean, both,
that probably didn't sit well with them because they envision you, being that next scholar.
It was, it was something. I mean, it was quite a series of conversations. I mean, I have two kids now, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so I think about this all the time where, what would I do in the event that my kids wanted to join the military, right? And part of the answer there is that I would sit down and I wouldn't bullshit them, right? Like, I would be very upfront with like what my experience was like and how I wouldn't take it back for anything. And yet I have this cognitive dissonance that I'll take to my grave, right? Where I'm fiercely proud of my service. I'm fiercely proud of having been an enlisted Marine, right? And yet I'm not sure what the value was of my service on humanity, right? And like whether or not, I don't think we should have been in Iraq, right? And like I became really actively against that while I was deployed and while I was in country. And then I've spent so much of my life, sorting through that. And I don't think that ever goes away. And yet I wouldn't take it back, right? Like what does that say? It's such a bizarre cognitive dissonance that so many of us have. And I actually think that that's why veterans have the ability to make such an impact on civic society, because we've served something bigger than ourselves. We've grown, but we've also learned along the way the consequences, the weight of serving something so much bigger than yourself.
Yeah, that experience is like no other, right? I mean, for a lot of us, we've never been to a foreign country,
right?
Let alone an enemy,
right?
Combatant country.
Exactly.
And so for us to go from our cozy American way into that, right? And if your beliefs are kind of not really aligned with that, that's got to be even rough. That's got to be rough where you feel like you're over there, and you're like, gosh, damn, why are we here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that I don't think that we talk about this enough in our community.
No, we don't. It's definitely a conversation I haven't had in 100 and something interviews, right?
Yeah,
so
right. It's
definitely
weird...
something we definitely don't talk about, or our feelings of going into it, or right.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And so like what it does to you matters a lot. And I think that, so just to flash forward a bit, and then I'll come to emphasize this point. The work that I do now, Warrior Scholar Project, national nonprofit, been around for 13 years. I'm going into almost my 12th year of working with it. And I've had the privilege of serving as CEO for the past 5 years. These are a series of primarily academic boot camps where we are taking enlisted veterans that are working through their next stages of higher education, right? Primarily at the undergraduate level. And we are showing them what it's actually like, and then helping them make those informed choices to kick ass in higher education, right? Because the reality is the GI Bill is an incredible benefit, but it is really underutilized in the sense of how people are setting their sights. So they're saying, well, you know what? I don't actually have what it takes to go to a great school, right? Like I missed the boat on that. Bullshit. Yes, you absolutely do. How do we show them that? We put them in a classroom, right, in this rigorous, intensive, authentic environment, which is ungraded, right? It's unaccredited by design, because the point is not to get a credit by going through Warrior Scholar Project Bootcamp. The point is to go through it and say, oh, wow, I actually do have what it takes to make this happen, right? Like, I could go basically anywhere that I want. And by the way, tons of great schools want veterans. And so how do you make those sorts of choices? A key part of that is identity, right? So we talk all the time. It's not just about the academics. When you're thinking about education, when you're thinking about what you want to do with your life, if you don't spend the time reflecting on who you are and the sum total of all the experiences you've had so far to inform your next choices, then the likelihood is that you're not really going to make a totally informed choice. And so we have these tough questions. Okay, you're coming to us, about 50% of our population's active duty, 40% veterans, separated veterans, 10% reserve or guard, right? So we cover this whole spectrum of military service. And you're coming to us and you're saying, I have some interest in higher education. And our first question, frankly, is why? Right? That sounds weird to say as a college prep organization, that we're not just like, all right, let's help you fill out the application, right? But if you give a compelling answer about why, and you haven't done the hard work to figure out the impact of military service, what you want to do, who you are, what your identity actually says about you, then the likelihood of success in higher education is much, much, much smaller. So this question of how do you actually reflect on military service? What I've found in talking to hundreds, actually, thousands of veterans over the years through Warrior Scholar Project and other veteran initiatives, is that this is this universal thing that people have complex, nuanced thoughts about military service. They might not come across that way initially, but if you dig beneath the surface, literally every veteran that I've ever talked with has some aspect, some mix of pride. And even that can be like pride cloaked in shame. Like some people are like ashamed that they have this pride, and other people just have this, they're so forward. Yeah, everything was great. But underneath that, when you start poking at that, it's actually a lot more nuanced too, the reasons that they're so proud. And we need to have that sort of open conversation in order for us to really reflect on what we did and what we're capable of doing moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of guys is the getting out and transitioning back into civilian life, right? In feeling like, where do I go from here? What do I do? And then sometimes, you go into these jobs and you've been in the Marine Corps 8 years, but your military service doesn't translate to any kind of experience in the jobs.
Yep.
And so right off rip, man, you get out and you feel like you were doing something or a part of something. And then now you're going to trying to find what can I be a part of again, and then you feel like you're getting rejected by everything.
Yeah.
And that's rough. And even in the school world, I think that a lot of guys are intimidated by it.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason why they probably chose the military is because, like me, I didn't think I would make it in college. Right. Because I barely was making it in high school. I didn't want to be there.
Right.
Right. I mean, whatever the absences were, I took it right up to that fucking. If it was 15 absences, I had 15 absences.
That's a skill, man.
For that quarter, and I had to keep a logbook of it all, man. That's how much I did not want to be there. I was like, well, I got 15 days a quarter I can miss before my parents have to sign some papers, and so a lot of us are already intimidated by the educational world already as well too, right? So a lot of guys don't go take advantage of education just for the sheer fact that they're scared of it, right? They're kind of, they have a fear of it. I actually it took me some while, but when I started working, when I got out, I worked at Northrop Grumman, which is an aerospace company, and I saw that, man, you know what, there's a lot of opportunity in this field, but if I want to be better or I want to get to the level I want to get to, I have to have education.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to go figure that out. So then I was like, oh shit, I got the GI Bill, and before I knew it, the company was paying 80% tuition reimbursement, and I had the GI Bill. So I was actually pocketing money. And when I got my degree, I made like about $15,000 getting my degree.
Yep.
And it's like, if you paid into the GI Bill, it is a damn shame if you do not use it.
That's right. Well, and so, I mean, you've tapped into a couple really important systemic things here, right? So one is, I would go back to you calculating so judiciously the amount of absences. There's an interesting part of like, that's intelligence in a different way. And I think that that is something where a lot of people, right, all the various reasons that people join, importantly, I think that there's a difference between the first pass reasons why people say that they joined versus why they actually joined. And I, perhaps to a fault, try and really be vulnerable, right? In some cases, it's put me into some tough spots to be able to say like, hey, it wasn't just because of like call to action. And I knew when I was 10 years old that I was going to enlist. No, I needed that rejection, which was a huge part. That was the catalyst, as I describe it, to tap into these other parts of who I am. And then coming out, it's not as if, oh, okay, it's 100%, everything is great. No, it was like, this really messed with me, right? And for the rest of my life that I'll carry that cognitive dissonance. And yet I'm so proud. I think that there's always more beneath the surface. And I think that this aspect too of people that have any variety of experiences, right? You as somebody who is just on that edge of, getting those calls to your parents saying, hey, Brian's not in school, right? Whatever it is that led you to join the military then shapes you. And here's what I needed. Here's part of what I was so driven by, right? There was some shame for me in saying that, well, basically every one of my friends that wanted to go to school is going, right? So I don't want to be the guy who's just at home figuring it out, right? Like I don't, I don't want to do that. I don't just want to, just want to go that path. Let me do something radically different. And then importantly, let me show what I'm actually made of, right? Like, let me prove to myself. I'm very upfront about the fact that I'm a privileged guy, right? Like grew up in a very comfy household, right? Like wanted for nothing there, right? And my father's an immigrant from communist Romania, like rebuilt his life here as a practicing physician. My grandparents, all immigrant, all of these things, right? And like, wow. I'm just sort of humming along, right? And I'm not doing anything. And that doesn't feel good. There's something in there. And so I wanted this idea. I was really fixated on this idea of, you know what? Everybody else go to school. I'm going to go to boot camp, and no one gives a shit where I came from, right? Like all that matters is whether or not I can do the thing that I'm asked to do. And I loved that, just wiping the slate clean. And I think the same thing is true for people that are just sort of bottoming out. We have an incredible alum named Rob Henderson, who recently wrote a book called Troubled. And he's a phenomenal example. He enlisted in the Air Force, but was like on the verge of just, he was just this whole life as a foster kid, and poverty and violence and drug abuse and all these things. And he views enlisting in the Air Force as the catalyst. And now he's getting his PhD at Cambridge, right? And, he's this renowned author, and he's this sort of person. But so I'm next, he wasn't literally in my boot camp platoon, but like I'm next to the Rob Hendersons of the world, vastly different background. But all that matters is, can each of us do the thing that we're supposed to do, right? Like all that other shit just gets wiped away. And at the lowest enlisted ranks, it's a true meritocracy, right? And I love that, right? Then it starts to get more complicated and political, right? But how do you become the guidon or get the PFC promotion, right? Like, well, you do the thing, you yell the loudest, right? You do there's something about that aspect in boot camp that I really fundamentally needed. And that changed me, right? Like it did the thing of kicking me into high gear. Then flash forward, right? I ended up being an Arabic translator. Funny thing with Staff Sergeant Salas.
You were a translator, huh?
Yeah. So I initially was public affairs. I didn't give a shit what they wanted to put me as, right? Just whatever. Let me go.
Yeah, right.
Do the thing, right?
You would open contract, did you? Or
so I was public affairs, and then Salas, while I was still a senior in high school, said, "Oh, they need some Arabic translators. You did well on the ASVAB. You want to take this, this DLAB, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery?" I said, "Sure," right? And I passed. I did well enough on that. If you tell me so, right? I thought I failed it. And they said, "Okay, well, sign this, and then to be a linguist." Come to find out, that adds a year onto my contract, right? Because the Arabic school is over a year. But I don't care, right? This kind of goes back to the mentality. 17-year-old Ryan, what's the difference between 5 years and 4 years? I'll get out when I'm 22 instead of 21.
You're starting a year early anyways, right?
Yeah,
you're 17.
Right, exactly. I'm already just fine, right? So, but it just, to me, demonstrates like a year of my life, contracted to the military. And I'm like, I should have been angry because he told me after the fact, right? But I don't care, right? Fine, let's go.
Yeah, no idea what your ass was getting into at that time either, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had no idea.
Sign me up.
But I really like the idea of actually like, all right, let me learn a language, let me learn a skill, let me connect with the community. Of course, most people in the SIGINT world, you're not connecting with the community, right? It's you and some cans, and and you're translating whatever's put in front of you and whatever you're hearing. But I did go back and forth to Iraq a couple times, 08 to 10. But in between, right? So I'm shaped by this rejection. I have this rejection at 17. When you're an Arabic linguist, you go for a year and a half, you get grades, but none of it matters except for one test at the end, right? That's all that matters, your DLPT. If you don't pass the DLPT, you can just be reclassed, right? And lo and behold,
You'll be a cook.
everybody that I knew passed it, and I failed it, right? Just by this much, right? By a little smidge. But I'm thinking, oh, fuck, right? Like I thought I had it.
Damn it, man. That's just this education shit.
Yeah, what's going on here, right? Like it's not in the cards for me. But I was close enough to the edge that they ended up giving me a refresher course, 8-week refresher course. And then I really doubled down. And I would say that is the first time in my life that I actually experienced what it's like to be a dialed in student, right?
Now, do you feel like you were struggling with the concentration part of it and not retaining it? Or like, I mean, because I know, man, like with me, I'm not the greatest of test takers sometimes, right? And, you know, unless I literally am so in tune with the actual, you know, what we're going over. So, I mean, was that kind of stuff rough for you? Did you like it, or was it challenging too much?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely challenging. I mean, I think that I think that I had never really been kicked in the ass and like been inspired to really study, right? Like that is honestly it. Because again, I figured out pretty early in my, you know, middle school, high school days that I could kind of phone it in and be fine, right? Like I could get that 3.0 and I could be fine and just not really try a ton. And so there was never really a point of like a red flashing light of like, Ryan, you actually got to do this. And the same thing was true for the entirety of that 1.5 years of learning Arabic, where again, there's tests and you're getting grades and I'm doing fine, right? Like I'm just like at the line of proficiency, right? Like I'm doing what I need to be able to do. I mean, the Marine Corps detachment also there is more interested in, you know, making sure that you're a Marine first, right? So every other branch has more study time, Air Force, Army, everybody else, Navy, but Marines are still Marines first and Arabic second, you know, but you know, whatever. That's part of the ethos, right? It's kind of charming in its own weird way. But I think that it wasn't until I actually, because again, my failure for that, it's binary, but I was just below the line to be qualified as a linguist. That was really the first time of like, oh, now if I'm given this opportunity for this refresher, let's go, right? Like, let's actually figure out.
And so you felt like you were like, I'm going to pass.
I had it
no matter what.
It was that moment, right? It was like education for me.
Lit the fire on your ass a little bit.
I needed that second failure also because the shame comes back, right? So shame at 17, all my friends go to college. Okay, but I was able to make a choice that I can actually like surprise people and I can join the Marine Corps, right? And then like, okay, Ryan's doing something different, right? And we'll see him every 6 months or so when he comes back on leave, right? And see where he's at. Here, again, basically everybody that I was in learning Arabic with passed, and so they're all going on. Then you go to Goodfellow, you do some SIGINT training, and then they're all going to Lejeune and Muse and deployments and these things. And so if I'm going to be reclassed as something else, that just felt like this immense shame. And so I needed that to kick my ass, right? And it did, right? And so I took it seriously. I had 8 weeks. I studied like I've never studied before in my life, right? And I spent the time with professors and I did all this other extracurricular studying and all these things. And then the test again was no problem, right? Like actually, you know, for the first time in my life, I got some of the higher marks, and it was like really well earned, right? It wasn't because it just sort of like intuitively grasped it. It's because I needed to study. And that changed me, right? That had a huge impact on my overall perception of education.
Well, I'm sure once you seen that you passed that was probably that feather in the cap you needed, you know, like, gosh, damn, I got to win.
I can do this.
And now that could project you and traject you into a different.
That's right. You know. It's the opposite of. And so this is the other thing, just broadly, I talk about rejection. It basically every cohort of veterans that I meet through Warrior Scholar Project or through otherwise, because we as veterans have this. We're all about bluster, right? And some of this, like we can give each other shit, right? Part of this is part of the community. I love it, right? Like I know it with some of my friends, right? Like it's just all bluster and shit talking, right? And I love it. And I wouldn't take it back for anything. But I do think it's important. Sometimes people look at where I am now, right? I'm the CEO of a nonprofit, of a $5 million nonprofit. I have a family, I have a house, I have this job that I love, and I'm able to have this impact. And sometimes people will look at this and say kind of like, oh, like, Ryan's got it figured out, right? And that's nonsense, right? I have some things figured out, but I try and be extremely honest about the setbacks in my life that led to me being able to be particularly well suited for what I do now, right? Like, but for those rejections, not only would I have not enlisted initially, but I also just wouldn't have actually been shaped. I wouldn't have actually been able to learn from those rejections. I wouldn't remember that visceral feeling. They posted the scores. I won't harp on this too much, but they posted the scores for that initial language test, right? And everybody's just crowded around it and everybody's celebrating. and I failed and I just slunk away, and I went to my car, and I just remembered this like pounding sensation, or, you know, and I just like, I needed to be isolated, I needed to be by myself. That rejection shaped me. So then I'm a linguist, you know, then I pass, then I go to Lejeune, right? Wanted to go to Pendleton, maybe Hawaii somewhere. No, you're going to Lejeune, right? You're getting Lejeune. You get Actionville, USA.
You're lucky you didn't get the stumps, man.
Look, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
It could be worse. Or I even heard, what was it, Utah? Someone said Utah's horrible too. I've never even.
Hey, that's right. It's all relative. That's exactly right. And
I'll tell you, I was at Camp Pendleton, and I did love it.
Yes.
Because originally my orders were for the stumps. And so I showed up and checked in, and they told me my orders were wrong. And he was like, I'm in a good mood today. I'll let you go if you want to go, or you can stay here. I was like, it's dead ass summer there, bro. I was like, I acted like I was like really trying to decide what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I knew in my head, I was ready to yell Camp Pendleton, but I let it come out after a few seconds of like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe I'll go to Camp Pendleton.
Again, there's a history to you, Brian, right? There's like this there's this intelligence, this plotting, right? The 15 days of absence, right? Not jumping on this Camp Pendleton, not saying it with too hasty of a tone, right? You know? This is
I'm a thinker, man. I do think a little bit about ththings.
I can tell. You probably wouldn't be in this seat, you know, having these interviews if you weren't thinking about that and how do you expand impact. Yeah, and I mean, I think that all of this, again, like we're all shaped by those individual moments in the military and the people that you're with, right? And I'll be friends, I'm sure, with those guys and gals that I served with for the rest of my life, for some of them, right? Because they're just people that you went through this really formative period of time.
It's we bond through our circumstances, right? I mean, some call it trauma bonding, you know, and maybe that is, we'll all go through some shit, but we're going through it together.
That's right.
You know, that's right. At the end of the day.
Well, and I think also, so this is another thing that I'm, to bring to another category that I think that people don't talk about enough. There's this hierarchical nature of the military, right? And part of that's just deeply by design, and it makes sense. And you need that for order and for operations and all those things. But it's part of what leads to the bluster, right? You go to boot camp. They say, well, just wait till you get to MCT. You go to MCT and they say, well, just wait, and, until you're out there. And then you're getting your schooling. Just wait till you get to the fleet. All right, you get to the fleet. Just wait till you deploy. All right, well, I deploy. Just wait till you deploy a second time, like to another. Like just it's like there's always this one-upsmanship, and the same thing exists in the veteran community. And again, a lot of it is like good. I think is on the side of bonding, where people like to give each other grief, and that's a really good thing. But there is also a sorting mechanism that a lot of veterans use that we see in our boot camps, for example, right? Where it's just sort of like this pecking order that people will put themselves into. So like one clear designation is like combat veterans, non-combat veterans, right? People who deployed, people who were stateside, right? Branches of service, all these things. And part of the work, going back to the identity stuff that I talked about, is figuring out how did those experiences shape who you are now, right? And that whatever somebody's experience was, there is some similarity. Every single person, every single veteran raised their right hand voluntarily. If they, enlisted within the last 52 years, it was voluntary. And they swore to uphold and defend the Constitution, to include with their lives, right? And that matters. So no matter where somebody served, no matter what they did, yes, you can be proud about these things that you did, but a lot of that sorting stuff, I think, is kind of, we need people to be able to move past that and to be able to be upfront about what they did and didn't do. What you see a lot of times, I did this, so eventually I go to college, right? Just to flash forward. So 08 to 10, I deploy a couple times. I'm in Iraq. Mostly I'm on TQ, my first base, my first deployment, on Al-Assad, my second. So I'm mostly almost always behind the wire, right? Inside the wire doing translation. Sometimes we're able to be attached to a unit. We had a human unit, an infantry unit to go out, do some interesting things, but most of it is on base, right? Safe deployments. I'm a non-combat veteran, right? Got into a couple dicey situations, but non-combat. And I feel to this day, no matter how much I talk about it, I still feel some kind of way about being a non-combat veteran and about talking about that. And the psychology of that is fascinating to me, right? Because
you know what's weird though is our generation's put into that category because we have combat through our time. There's generations that have zero combat guys serve their time and they did their time.
That's right.
They just weren't, their number wasn't called, right? But the thing about it is, the way I look at it is everybody that swore in to go and fight against the country,
right?
You know, no matter what. So I never try to categorize people, and I don't, and I never go look at someone and, hey, did you go to combat? Did you not?
Yeah,
that's never a conversation I really care to have with a veteran. It's more like, hey, you weren't ready to be a Marine yet. Oh, that's hilarious. You know, like just those kind of things. You know, not like, oh, you didn't go over here. Well, you're less of a veteran. You know, I hate that we do, because even you hear pogues, right? You hear the pogue word and the infantry guys, right? And I think it starts off as banter, right? And it's a little fun, but then everybody starts getting way too serious with it, and then it becomes not just a banter anymore. It becomes you versus them, or pogues versus and I wish in our own community that we can kind of break some of those stigmas and start. And that's why for me, I have this podcast, and I'm a huge fan for everybody that comes on here. And I want them to get out what they're doing and to be proud. And I want us to work together, not against one another, right? Because at the end of the day, no one can ever take away that we are the number one fighting force in this entire world.
Yeah.
And when we're on the battlefield together, we can do amazing things. Yeah. So why in the freak can we not do the same thing off the field? Well, and even though we go back into our own worlds,
right,
we need to take what we learned, right, and bring it into our communities,
right? Because
we all operated that we were all green.
Yeah,
there wasn't a matter of what your religion was, what color you were. Bada bada boom. Is there some stupid stuff still? Yeah, but we operated and still knew that we had a mission to go complete, and we couldn't do it without one or the other.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had to exist and operate together to make that mission be success. If we worked against each other and we hated each other and we didn't work, the mission could go wrong completely.
I mean, now, I think you have that's exactly right. I mean, this is just to jump in. That's the thing, right? Is that you've processed this enough, and you've had enough of these conversations that to you like me, right? Like we're so convinced of the merits of that, right? That it's just like we should be able to look beyond that. Of course, we're going to give each other. Of course, we're going to that's the good stuff, right? Like that's just
have fun with it, right?
That's how we bond, right? That's the common part. Like that's fine, right? Like that's good stuff. But taking that multiple layers takes time, right? It takes conversation. This is the other thing we talk about with the folks at Warrior Scholar Project is we are really proud of the change and transformation that can happen, that people can embrace in the course of a week, right? Because it's so calculated to be able to push people to their academic limits and to these really thinking deeply around what's it going to be like when I'm a veteran and suddenly I'm on a college campus with quote unquote these 18-year-olds, this phrase that we hear all the time. What the hell do they know about life? The answer is like a lot, right? If you listen, right? But it's different from your experience. But it's no matter what we can accomplish in a week in our boot camps, in the academic boot camps, it's the beginning of a journey, right? It should be this moment that people reflect on years down the road and say, okay, from that point, I took a different view of my own service and of the service of other people. It doesn't have to be this tribal thing where I resort back only to the people that have an experience similar to what I had. One of the most formative conversations and formative relationships and friendships that I have now is after I got out, when I went to Michigan, which, by the way, right, you're probably going to sense a trend here, but I got rejected when I applied to Michigan, right? So 5 years in the Marine Corps, said, all right, I got it, right? Let's go.
It's lucky you're not like, you didn't let those stop you. You know what I mean? Because a long time ago, your rejection, if you would have took that the wrong way, you could be in a different seat today.
That's
You
right.
know what I mean?
Look, call me Chumbawamba. You knock me down, I'm going to get back up again. You know, let's go. Let's
Love
keep
it, brother. Yeah, that's how
you got to keep it going, right?
that's how success looks, man.
That's but
You
but
know,
you
it
gotta,
doesn't look perfect.
no, it never does. Never does. But you got to feel the rejection, right? This is the other thing. It's just like, let it sink in, let it suck, right? Like, let it go. Like, I had to retreat to my car and just feel my pulse, right, in my body, and just feel this like world closing in around me. And then you get to work. So by the time I go to Michigan, right, at this point, I know I want to go to school. I know I need to get out of the Marine Corps, but it didn't matter what reenlistment bonus, tax-free they wanted to pay, right, in 2010 for Arabic translators who are deployed. I don't care, right? There's no number, right? And I need to get out, right? I have to get out for my own good, for my own well-being, and I have to pursue this next stage. I need to look through an academic lens at all these things that I was doing in the military, the intel side and everything there, right? It was so fascinating, the cultural transition and everything happening in Iraq. And so I get rejected, but I'm more mature, right, at that point. I applied to Michigan because I just Googled college veterans in Arabic because I had this loose idea to continue to study Arabic. So that's not an informed way to go about selecting a school. But I applied to the schools that popped up on that list. Michigan did. They have a lot of Arab Americans in that area, really strong Arabic program. First school I heard back from, got rejected. So I feel that and think, oh, shit, right? Like, here's this third,
You've been through this before,
rejection.
though.
Yeah, right. But
you persevered through it.
Exactly, right. And because of those 8 weeks, you know, for the course that I had after I failed the initial Arabic test, I know what it's like to be a good student. I have more drive here, right? So I call the office and I say, hey, like, I would just, you know, if you can give me any information on my application, that would be really helpful, right? Like, not saying how dare you reject me, but just like, hey, I was really interested in coming here. I have some.
And you asked them in Arabic, didn't you?
that would have been a power move. Oh man,
that would have been.
Damn. I needed you as my advisor back then. That would have been good. No, but they, they connected me to somebody who had reviewed my application. She called me back and she said, "Look, yeah, you have things on your resume, but you haven't actually shown you can be a good student, right?" Which is a totally fair. They had my high school transcript and my Arabic transcript, right? Both of which are fine, but not great. So I did what a lot of us do. I enrolled in community college. I was at Lejeune at the time. I had 3 months left on my contract, 3.5 months. Like, command had no idea what to do with me because they were too lazy to set up a proper skiff back home so we could do Arabic translation. So I said, look, instead of, doing whatever duty station you have, whatever working party, let me just go take some community college classes. And they said, fine, right? Just go take those. So I went to the on-base Coastal Carolina Community College and, English and psychology, whatever they had going, right? Fine. And so I called back after I enrolled. And Michigan did something odd where they conditionally admitted me in that same cycle that I was rejected. So conditional on me getting A's in those 2 courses, they would admit me in that same cycle. When I talk about this with our population, right, the folks who work with the WSP, Warrior Scholar Project, it's not advising that particular course of action, but it is to say when you want something and you're willing to advocate for yourself, that comes through, right? Like me calling them and saying, hey, like, what do I need to do? And them saying, well, you need to show you can get good grades. Okay, let me go to community college and get some good grades, right? Again, that was a huge part of me actually getting accepted there. What I was going to say before is one of the closest friends that I made there very early on was somebody who he served, Battle of Fallujah, infantry Marine, unbelievable guy, right? Very different Marine Corps experience than I did, right? He had much more of like the quintessential Marine Corps experience. And it was fascinating, life-giving, horrifying, cathartic, all of these things going through a couple years of college with him. We ended up, living together and just like, he was my guy, like go out, like, let's get drinks, right? Like, let's do this. And just talking about this experience that I just had from my perspective as an Arabic translator, talking about the same events alongside an infantry Marine and getting his perspective on it. Right. And it just, my perspective just exploded in the sense of expanded, right? For so much of like all the things that I saw is just this narrow sliver. And so again, when we talk about zooming back out to the conversation for you and I were talking about before, no matter what the pecking order is in the military or in the veteran circles, if you are willing to be able to actually take a step back and realize that your experience is only one just tiny sliver of the pie of what actually happened, and you're listening to the people who did all the other things in the military, like that is what creates this real ability to be able to reflect and move forward in a meaningful communal way.
And bro, when you say it like that, if you really boil it down, Imagine how many tasks were involved with the war,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and I'm talking even for the guys that still were on the stateside,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they were loading up shipping containers
Absolutely.
and shipping shit off. And I mean,
Absolutely.
just because guys were on the stateside didn't mean they weren't integral to supporting the war. You
Yeah.
know, they were just they were in the rear with the gear, which is
Yeah.
we need that too.
Yeah.
But it's very crazy to think, like, even when it comes down to interpreters, bro, like,
Yeah.
people don't realize how intricate everything is in the military.
Yeah.
We have interpreters
Yep.
because we need to understand what our enemy, you know, are saying, and things like that. But people don't ever know there's cooks that are instrumental in the to the mission. There's supply guys, there's admin guys, there's translators, there's so many jobs that support that war. Yes, we have the frontline guys that are in there doing all the horrible stuff, but there's a lot of people that have to support that so that these guys can do the best that they can.
I mean, that's exactly right. Well, and let me
crazy.
take it a step further, right? Which is that, like, so often we talk about the civilian military divide, which is a construct that I don't frame it in that way typically, because I think that it automatically puts people in sort of a defensive, right? Like, we have to build, like, there isn't a bridge. We must build a bridge from first principles. No, like, there's already some relationship exists. And I think the question is more thinking about within that Venn diagram of civilians on one side, you know, veterans or military on the other side, how do you bring people closer together? What you just said too is it's not even just, you know, your fellow service members that are making those sort of things happen. It's the whole machinery on the civilian side, right? Like, this is a societal effort to be able to make that type of thing happen. And I think you have some very visceral examples if you look at particular, you know, previous wars where industries are nationalized in order to be able to, you know, get the materials overseas to be able to fight the wars, right? So we're not quite at that level, right, for purposes of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. But you are certainly at a level still where you have civilian control over the military. And so sometimes too, if we think about it and we're too short-sighted, or we're only
Think about it. That community feeds the military.
That's exactly
no matter
it.
what.
That's exactly
At
it.
the end of the day, that community is raising future
right
people, or whoever going to eventually join that military. That community basically feeds the other community, right?
That's spot on. And I mean, and I think that, so when you come back, right, when you're back and you're out of the military and you're thinking about this, okay, again, our particular lens is through education, because it is abundantly clear. We have thousands upon thousands of examples now of how education can be this formative way to not only get your degree for purposes of getting your next job, but also to really explore who you are as a person at this pivotal place. Right now, sometimes that's a luxury that people can't afford. If you have, you know, family obligations, or you have to work full time at the same time and you can't fully embrace it, you can still get some aspect out of it. But
I went online. You know, I took my Colorado Tech University online course. Took me 2.5 years to do it. Here's what I'll say about my experience, right? I wouldn't say that I took away a lot of stuff. Like, I learned a lot of valuable things that was valuable to me as a project manager at my job, right?
Right.
But what it did teach me is a lot more of appreciation for my job, right? It taught me beyond just being an employee, but thinking also like the manager or the owner or the CEO, and looking at everything from a top level, looking down, versus, you know, when you're a worker, you're just over here fucking shredding stuff up, wasting material, throwing it away, not realizing that that's coming out of the company, right? Like, you know, someone's paying for that, but because you're an employee there, you're just like, who cares? Oh, let's buy new stuff. And, you know, we just don't have that appreciation. You know, the college level brought me up to a level of seeing things from a systematic viewpoint as well. And seeing actually how that trickles down and works, and how, you know, everything basically feeds up or feeds down. You know, I mean, there's so much that I learned there. I wouldn't, you know, and also when you start getting your grades back and you're seeing you're doing good, man, that's another thing that helps you with your mental, right? You're like, oh man, I'm doing so much better than I ever thought I would,
Right.
and so that stuff kind of trajects you and keeps you going. And I'm glad I went and got my degree and I took, advantage of the GI Bill.
Yeah.
I think it made me a better employee for my company,
Right.
and it made me a better person as well. And it
Right.
also, I had to learn things that I never learned before, and I had to think differently, than I ever had before. That's one thing that I think with veterans, man, we get very set in our ways,
Mhm.
right? And we're
Yeah,
very closed mind. We become very closed minded people as
yeah.
well.
Well,
And so we close everything off, and
yeah.
oh, this is my way. I don't care what everybody else thinks, and we get very closed minded.
I think
So
that's right, man. Well, so this is the point is I think that when I say education, right, when we're an education focused nonprofit, the narrow view of that is it's purely 4-year degrees, right? But for us, that is a way for us to be able to help people make those informed choices, right? So for you going through, Colorado Tech, being able to leverage that degree and to be able to have it be something which is helpful for your trajectory afterwards, I would hazard a guess, right? If we were to flip the script here, and if I were able to ask you a bunch of questions, right? If I was the interviewer and we were to unpack more about, about your experience in your life, that's a reflection of the sort of thoughtful, intentional person that you are, more so than it is that institution, right? That particular college that is doing that for you. And I think that this is, again, you found a way to make those informed choices about how you wanted to be able to leverage this and to what end, in a way that most veterans, for a couple of the reasons that we've already talked about here, one of them, veterans being set in their ways, another one, veterans sort of thinking they missed the boat on education, right? And there's no way that they could actually accomplish things. Most veterans are just kind of following the well-trodden path that exists, right? So the post 9/11 GI Bill is an
walking around like some
unbelievable
zombies sometimes,
benefit.
man. Just
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
just
for
going with
sure.
the flow of life.
Exactly. Right. And sometimes you have to do that for a period of time, right? But like a
Correct.
huge part of it is like, how do you make those intentional choices? Post 9/11 GI Bill, again, I'm very open about this, is that I got my undergrad and my law degree paid for essentially by the post 9/11 GI Bill, right? Like, holy shit, that is an unbelievable benefit if you know how to use it in the right way.
Dude,
Like
yeah,
that is
because you hear nothing about all these kids coming out with debts,
right. Exactly.
all these loans and stuff like that.
Exactly
So
right. That's exactly right. I mean, frankly, a big part of my ability. After law school, I worked in corporate litigation for a hot minute, and I was fine at what I did, but my heart wasn't in it, right? But I had the opportunity to come on board to Warrior Scholar Project full time. This was back in 2018. I'd been volunteering and working part time with it for about 5 years beforehand. But I had the ability in 2018 to be able to come on board the WSP, which, paid a competitive salary, but certainly not what I was making in corporate litigation, because I didn't have that debt, right? So I was able to leverage that GI Bill into a public good, right? For me to be able to say my primary driver doesn't have to be how do I maximize my earnings potential, right? Like just taking the job where I can earn the most money so that I can pay off that debt. So the GI Bill can absolutely be this catalyst for something for what comes next. But most veterans are just going to follow. They're just going to stay on that treadmill. They're just going to do the thing that's kind of pulling them forward, that conveyor belt. 1.5 million enlisted veterans don't yet have a college degree. The VA last year spent about $12.3 billion on education benefits. 27% of that went to for-profits. 7 of the top 10 institutional recipients of GI Bill dollars are for-profits. One that rhymes with, University of Schmeenix collected, $1.4 billion in education benefits in an 8-year period.
wow.
They were recently fined by the state of California for deceptive marketing practices towards veterans. So they had to pay a $45 million fine. There are ways to be able to leverage a for-profit online degree for the benefit of your own life and for your family and for your career. But oftentimes what happens is veterans are pursuing those degrees because they say, well, I guess I should get a degree. These are the ones I've heard of. These are the ones that the senior enlisted leaders over me, by the way, like have actually experienced. The people that were running my TAP classes, weren't able to provide me instruction. Nobody at TAP is incentivizing people to really push high and to pursue, to really think deeply about higher education. It's much more just this check in the box side of things. And so this is what this is sort of the systemic force that we're up against. And I have yet to meet a veteran that is incapable of succeeding at a really rigorous, excellent institution, provided they have the right mentality and the right support along the way.
That's great, man. So yeah, let's definitely talk more about the program and how it works. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the website.
Yeah. So look, so we have a few different offerings. The core thing that we do are these academic boot camps, like I've been talking about. And so the eligibility criteria for this are really simple. So you have to be enlisted, and the primary program, you have to be an undergraduate at the undergraduate level. You don't have to have any college credit so far. It's just that if you've already completed your bachelor's, most likely this is not the right program for you. We want to focus on people at that. So those academic boot camps there on the left side, that's the primary program I'm talking about.
So if they had like a 2-year degree or something, they're AA something they can
Exactly, absolutely. Then come on in. You could have 115 of your 120 credits for your bachelor's. You have any profit, right? Come on in. And the premise for this is that you take these veterans and you put them, about 95% of our boot camps are in person. We still operate some from the virtual, in the virtual world, which we developed during the pandemic and are really nice for people from, family reasons or from an equity access standpoint to be able to do this. But for the ones that are in person, which is most of them, you are coming to one of our 20 college or university partners, and you're there for about 9 days. And you are sleeping in the dorms, you're eating in the dining halls, you're taking classes in the classrooms, and you are meeting and receiving instruction from the college faculty, from some incredible writing instructors along the way, and then also from our alumni. So the core thing that we are actually really driving at here is not to be able to help people get that credit through our boot camps. Again, it is deliberately, the purpose of it is not to get a grade and a credit. The purpose of it is for you to be able to actually see what you're capable of in a rigorous college environment.
Giving you a little bit of like a toolbox kind of, like to kind of help you and see where help you, I guess, get through because it is hard, man. I mean, especially if you've been removed from schooling for a while. I know like my daughter, she's at UC San Diego on her 3rd year right now. And when she first went there, it was, oh my gosh, I didn't even know how to study, for this. She did, because, obviously for her at her school, and in the public school system, if you're not taking all these extra classes, you're kind of just with the general population, and they're, they cater to whoever they can to get them passed.
Right.
So now she was struggling for the first 2 years because it was just so hard for her to learn how to study, do all that stuff. But I mean, this sounds like a good program to help you get on the right path to be successful.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and I think that, even the page that you're on here, it's interesting. This is one of our newest initiatives on the career pathway side, where we are deliberately not trying to replicate what already exists out in the ecosystem, the hire heroes, the next stops, hiring our heroes, all these organizations that are doing that. And yet we've realized that in order to make informed choices about education, you need to make an informed choice about to what end, right? Like, what's the career that you're driving at here? So this is a new pilot program. It's actually just launched this month. So it's our newest thing, small cohort of people that we're really trying to dig into. Where are you trying to go, right? So if you want to understand where you should study, how you should study, all of those things, it matters what your end goal is. If I find a veteran, I don't know how many enlisted veterans I've talked to over the years that want to be lawyers, right? Great. So let's have a conversation, right? Why do you want to pursue that? The answers to that are often something to the equivalent of, well, I like to argue, or I'm good at arguing, or I'm not quite sure what else to do, right? I'm going to push a lot harder if somebody gives me those two answers. But let's say we actually get to the place that, okay, you have this network of attorneys, you want to do this thing, you want to end up in some sort of practice. That should inform your undergraduate choices. Ideally, you're not thinking about this only as an afterthought that you say, well, I got my undergrad, I don't know what to do, therefore I'll go to law school. The path there is also different. If you want to go to med school, well, there are some really important prerequisites that you need to take at the undergraduate level in order for you to be qualified for most med schools. So again, this side of this holistic view, you're at this point of some stage of transition, broadly defined. You're thinking about what's the role of education for me, And well, let's think of first of all about where do you want to be 5-10 years from now, and back that into, the immediate next choices for you.
I love it. So run us down the path, right? Someone's interested in this program.
Yeah.
Kind of run us through it, what that looks like for someone who's new to it. Is there cost for them? All those kind of intricate details. Someone was very interested.
Yeah. So an important question there. So no cost to the veteran. That's a big part of my job, my board's job, my development team, right? Is raising $5 million a year so that there's no cost to anybody to go through this thing.
That's a lot of money to earn too, man.
It's a hustle. Yeah. It's a hustle, especially
you gotta be.
Is not what it was 10 years ago, right? There's a lot of corporations and foundations and individuals turning elsewhere. But the only thing folks have to pay for is getting themselves to and from the program. So if you live local to a boot camp, right? So we have them throughout the country, at Yale, at UChicago, at Michigan State, at Stanford, right? So we're throughout the country with institutions that really want to support WSP and support veterans. If you're close to them, then you just got to get yourself there. If you're far away and you want to go to a particular boot camp, well, you got to buy a plane ticket. That's your only cost, right?
Just got to get there. Yeah. Okay.
Right. That's it.
And that's a lot of, I think, how a lot of them work is the big thing is just making sure you have a ride to and from. What's
interesting is we received a incredible donation from Mackenzie Scott as part of her societally changing philanthropy a couple of years ago. And it gave us the opportunity to try a pilot program of giving people a stipend for their travel. And we don't do that anymore. It changed the incentive structure in a way that we were really hoping wouldn't happen,
and they probably were trying, some of that money probably wasn't used on travel.
Yeah. And it's just, it created some strange conversations in the classroom about why people are there. And so we found that having just like a little bit of skin in the game, getting yourself to and from the program actually really matters, right?
That does. That's true.
Yeah. And so in any events, right? So somebody's interested in this, what they got to do is they got to go to warrior-scholar.org and they click at the top right. There's a big bold button called, attend or learn more about boot camps. It's called Attend to Boot Camp, right? Red button, top right. You click that, you can learn some more, and then you fill out an interest form. It's super easy, super quick. There you go. So we scroll all the way up and you will see at the top right there, Attend to Boot Camp. There you go. And so what this looks like, you can either click learn more about our boot camps, or you can just do start the process. Start the process here is meant to be something which is a low friction interest form. So this should take 60 seconds or so to fill out what you're on there right now.
They even give you scroll down.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's easy. You don't got to fill up that much.
Because the intent here is that before somebody actually completes the full application, we want them to know more about us and we want to know more about them. So what you're basically doing with starting the process is setting up time with a member of my outreach team so that they will get back to you very quickly, right? They'll set up some time, 20, 30 minutes. You talk to them, learn more about WSP. If it's a good fit, then you get the full application. Our application is meant to be something that is, we're assessing somebody's desire to be able to pursue higher education, but it's not meant to be something which is competitive. We want to be able to offer seats that are in alignment with the demand that we see. But it is a commitment, right? Then you go through you get admitted to a particular boot camp. There's a bunch of a meaningful amount of connection that we have with people beforehand, so they have a sense of what they're getting into. And then you show up to a college campus in one of three disciplines: humanities, STEM, or business. That changes the academic curriculum. And then you are with a cohort of 10 to 15 students for this week-long program. And you are going through and you are reading the Constitution, you're discussing the Constitution, you're reading the Declaration of Independence.
You got homework?
Oh, you got homework. You're working. You're working from sun up to sundown and beyond. I mean, these things we say it's about 75 to 80 hours.
It's a boot camp, man. That's what
we mean it. Well, look, and so the name Warrior Scholar, the idea is if you go through boot camp, no matter what you're doing.
Is there a dropout rate in this, sheesh, man? Or is it, everybody's pretty successful?
It's exceptionally low, right? I mean, this is the thing, right? Is that you have a boot camp mentality. It's the ethos of a warrior, right? Here, the same thing is true. Let's instill that ethos of a scholar, right? That's what we want people to see themselves really succeeding in higher education. By the time that somebody shows up to a boot camp, we've worked with them enough that there is a very, very low attrition rate when somebody's actually at the boot camp.
Because you guys kind of vet them out a little bit just to make sure
exactly.
they
And then importantly,
truly want this commitment, because it's a commitment, right?
It's a commitment, right?
It's like when you join the military, it's a commitment. 4 years
That's
commitment.
right.
This one's a 9-day. You said 9 days?
Yeah, it's about 9 days, right? So you show up on a so it depends on, some people show up a little bit. So it's essentially Saturday to Saturday. So I would say it's 7 days, but oftentimes people are tacking on. So yeah, 7 or 8 days depending on
travels and all that. Yeah.
But we are we're working with people that come from all different types of backgrounds, people that have all different types of ambitions. And you don't need to be declaring a major in humanities, STEM, or business, but getting those basic principles and sitting in seminars from faculty that want to be able to teach you, and learning from fellow veterans who are WSP alumni who have been through the program. Those are our alumni fellows who can say, hey, here's what it's actually like to apply these skills and to be in a classroom with, quote unquote, these 18-year-olds. And here's what it's like to figure out, how do you channel the veteranness of your identity for good in the classroom, right? What's the right balance, right? How do you infuse that in a way which is meaningful for the classroom culture, but not toxic, or isn't something where you're taking over the conversation, right? So that alumni mentorship piece is integral. We call our alumni fellows the secret sauce, the lifeblood of what we do. That's a huge part of the differentiation between us and any other program that's trying to prepare veterans.
They get to show what success looks like.
That's exactly right. And the success rates strong. About 90% of our alumni go on to pursue higher education and complete their degrees, right? So that is an exceptionally high rate.
Do you happen to have a number on how many alumni you guys have had cross through?
2,501.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
So that's
2,501. Nice.
Yeah. And this year, about 300 people will go through the boot camps, and we'll serve about 300 folks through a variety of other services. So those are some alumni services like what you were scrolling through. We also have one-day workshops that we do primarily in partnership with community colleges. We find that a lot of veterans are confident enough to go back to their hometown after service and start community college, but not confident enough to figure out what comes next after that. So we have some outreach efforts there. And then next year is actually something that we've been spending years planning, that we're actually going to be able to go live with next year, which is an on-demand version of the essence of our boot camps, right? So for as proud as we are of the work that we do, the thing that quite literally keeps me up at night is thinking about the tens of thousands of people that are either currently in higher education or that are about to start higher education or thinking about it, that are not going to make those informed choices, right? TAP is failing. The Transition Assistance Program is failing at a systemic level year over year over year, particularly when it comes to the education piece, right? When I got out in 2010, TAP was utterly useless. It's marginally better now. It's a controversial claim, but it's an informed claim, right? I have my finger on the pulse for people that are going through this all the time. And we will always, as an organization, and I as an individual, will always try and do things to improve TAP. But part of the problem it's not the instructors, it's not the curriculum. The curriculum for TAP on the education front is actually quite good. The challenge is the incentives. So you have people that are compressing all of this transition time into this really narrow window that depends somewhat on the generosity of your command to say, yeah, sure, right? Instead of you working on this, right? Like, yeah, go ahead and do TAP. You think about SkillBridge, right? Not TAP, but another really important employment-focused transition program. The Marine Corps, you might be tracking this, the Marine Corps just hollowed out its allotment for SkillBridge time because they did this study, and the Marine Corps Manpower Reserve Office realized that from 2021 to 2024, they lost about 3,000 years worth of Marines' time, right? And if I'm the Commandant of the Marine Corps and I'm looking at a loss of 3,000 years of Marine Corps working time in a 3-year period, I'm sure as hell going to hollow out our allotment as well, right? I'm going to cut that in half. And so my point for this is that when I talk, I speak boldly about these challenges that we have. And I think that there does have to be some sort of systemic change across the board. But I'm not sitting around, we are not as an organization sitting around just waiting for that to happen. We're going to advocate for change. But in the meantime, we're going to build this on-demand platform. It's going to be on Coursera. It's going to go live in mid-2025. And it is going to walk people through in a really dynamic, engaging way, for free, by the way, how you make these informed choices about higher education. And the vision is that this is just the thing which is known in the community, that if you want to pursue higher education, what do? You don't need command approval. You don't have to go anywhere, right? Do this thing online. make these informed choices. And if that's useful, then imagine what it would be like to come through a full academic boot camp, right? Like then this is available for people that really want to push themselves there.
So do you guys I have two questions. One is this one you don't really have to disclose, but I'm sure you guys have a roundabout cost of what it costs for one person to make it through the whole course.
Yep.
And then also, do you guys have a designated campus? You guys have your own space?
Yep.
How does that look?
Absolutely. So our direct cost per student for somebody who goes through a boot camp is about $5,500. So that's
about right. Food
it's a hefty amount, right? And all the materials, all the travel, all the support. The instructor to student ratio is somewhere around like 2 to 1, right? By the time you factor in the writing instructor. So we pay our instructors, we pay our fellows, right? All of these things.
Do you guys have a cap on how many can be in one class, or you 15. Guys cap that out?
Yeah. 15? So sometimes with yield rates, they'll get a little bit higher, but 15 is a pretty magic number, right? Because what we want is for everybody to be seen and for everybody to grow. Right. And so if we're doing this in a seminar of 100 people, right, it's that, you don't know who, right. It's just, that's not going to happen. So every cohort is about 10 to 15 people. That's the target. That's that magic window for us. It's really high touch, right? It's really high impact. That's part of what, again, differentiates this from something which is just sort of a click through course, which I should say is the challenge for us with the on-demand model, is that we want to capture some of that same impact. It's going to, it's a dynamic hybrid thing where it's filmed. It's not just talking head, right? But it's also a view into the classroom, and it's pushing people along the way to be able to think critically about these things. But when we are actually in the classroom, it's really high touch. And then, to your second question, so we have this coming year, we'll have 20 college and university partners. That's also available on our website, on that same link that you were on before with, when you click learn more about our boot camps, you can look at who the academic partners are. And so this is a collection of, we try and have a really diverse array, and we build partnerships for multiple years, as opposed to this being one-off. So it's some small liberal arts schools that are really trying to actively work with veterans. So schools like Amherst, schools like Williams, schools like Wesleyan. It's
now, are these all Chicago-based schools?
No, we're everywhere.
You guys are
we're everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
So,
great.
And then we're, so Yale was where we started, right? So we're still at Yale, we're still at Harvard. But we're at Chicago, we're at University of Illinois, right? As I was saying, sort of that irony, that delicious irony of us now having that program there. We're out west. We need to expand more into the South, so we'll be back there before long. But yeah, I mean, these are the anchor partners that we have that students are coming to. And importantly, a student doesn't have to have some sort of expressed interest in pursuing college at that institution, right? Again, the premise of it is going to that institution, having this experience. You come out the other end and
to
you
get your discipline, basically, right?
Right. Yeah. Let's go. And then that's a huge part of our alumni services, is after you go through the boot camp, let us help you figure out where you want to go. How do you actually put together these applications? How do you build these connections into career? If you want to go to graduate school, right? When I was in law school, I was one of very, very, very few enlisted veterans at UVA, right? There's a couple dozen commissioned officers there, and that's great that they're there, right? But we need a lot more enlisted veterans that are thinking about graduate school.
Absolutely. Man, I never even heard about something like this. So, this is why I love doing the podcast, because I get to learn about all the great things that are out there for our brothers and sisters, right? I mean, and a lot of us don't even know that some of this stuff exists. The more that we all keep talking about things that are going on, the more that we're going to learn and be like, oh, wow, that exists. Well, let me look that up so I could be a part of that or learn, get something from that. So,
it's exactly
a lot of you people out there that have put your commitment towards your country and you served, don't be afraid to take advantage of some of these great opportunities that are out there for you specifically, right? And the only way these places are successful is if people go utilize them, right? So I think that sometimes we get so turned off to it all that we remove ourselves completely for the longest time, but then we're hurting ourselves because there's so many great things out there, and as time keeps going on further and further, more and more of these nonprofits keep coming up. And you guys been around for 15, 16 years, dude.
Yeah.
So that's a long time, right? And so the other thing that I think that we need to try to get better at is putting these actually into the branch's hands. Put them into the Marine Corps, put them in the Army. Hey, this needs to be part of your separations package. We got a great opportunity for some of these guys. Here's something they can do without a cost to them, and because everybody freaks the fuck out as soon as they hear $5,500. You know how many dudes you're going to get coming to volunteer for that shit?
Right.
You know what I mean? So when they hear free, what? Food too? Sleep? What? You know, I mean, it helps. So, I love all the different things that are out there, and for anybody that out there still just kind of sitting around and twiddling your thumbs, man, it's almost shame on you. There's a lot of great opportunities out there for you to go try something. And if education isn't for you, there's other things out there as well. But the great thing about education is you learn things, things that you never knew before. You get a different perspective. You get to think outside the box a little bit. But I absolutely love what you guys got going on. Is there any other things that you may have left out that we didn't touch on that you want to, touch on before we head out?
I'll just end by emphasizing what you were talking about there. I mean, we have we're really proud of the programs that we offer. There's nothing else out there that's like it. If anybody is interested in what we do, there it is, warrior-scholar.org. If you're an enlisted veteran interested in pursuing higher education, check it out. But there is a broader thing here. And this is somewhat of what you and I were talking about in the first half of the podcast, where it takes an individual commitment to grow and to learn. And all of these resources are out here. Warrior Scholar Project is, of course, one. I'm heavily biased towards, knowing that it's, one of the best ones that's out there. But no matter what it is that you're trying to do, finding those resources is going to require sometimes some work on your part to find it. If you want to do, if you want to pursue a particular trade, if you want to code, right? Like, guess what? There are programs out there that are catered for veterans to be able to do those things. And even outside of training, vocational training or higher education degree, just the willingness to be able to learn, right? So one of my, I'll end with one of my favorite quotes here, which is very much part of the ethos of how we operate our boot camps and also how I run my life, which is a quote from John Stuart Mill from On Liberty, where he says, "He who knows only his side of the case knows little of that." The idea being here that if you are only able to demonstrate the reason why you are right, and you can't take a step back and think about somebody else's perspective and why they have their belief, why they have their perspective, then you don't really understand even your own perspective. If you just retreat into what's comfortable, into that comfort zone, and you're not actually trying to push yourself and engage with people that have wildly different viewpoints, like, that's the good stuff. That's the hard stuff. And that's not just what individual veterans need or the veteran community needs, but frankly, it's what the country needs. Like, this is the thing that we have the capacity to really be able to look beyond just what we already have as these comfortable set of beliefs. You have to be pushing yourself out there. So grow, so read, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and do some with some humility that you don't know everything. That's what it takes to really grow.
And you know what, man? Information is way more accessible than it ever has been in our entire existence.
Yes.
It is literally at the palm of your hand. You can look up anything. So I learn a lot of stuff from YouTube videos, I mean, so I don't know. You've said a lot of great things, man. And a lot of it resonated well with me as well. And, I love that you guys are helping brothers and sisters to have a successful path, or at least giving them the ability to go into something with knowledge and the ability to walk away with success versus failure.
Yeah.
Because, failure, even though you didn't look at it as failure or rejection as a stoppage, but there's a lot of people that will.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that when the door shuts, they're content with that, and they don't want to slam on the door again or knock it open or push it open ever again. They just walk away.
Yeah.
so giving them a chance, right? It that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I imagine that when they go through your system, you got alumni, people in there that are already successful, and everybody in there wants to see the next person's success. So I imagine you're building up a tribe, and you guys are all there to help each other. Like, and the option is not to fail. We will help. We're all going to get you through this.
Exactly right.
So it's a beautiful thing, bro.
It's exactly right. It's about people paying that forward. People that have been in it. People, I think about one guy in particular. Won't share his name, but just somebody who went through a course a couple of years ago of ours, and it broke him, right? Because we're just like asking these questions about transition, and just like he was at this low, and now this guy is kicking ass, right? Like he's a leader of his, on his institution. He's he's come back and worked with us. And I mean, it's just seeing that sort of transformation. I've seen it time and time and time again, but somebody's got to have the humility, and they got to have the willingness to grow. And then anything is possible.
That's great, man. And you guys are helping, you're helping the situation. This is a solution to problems in our world, and we need more solutions. Everybody has problems, but no one wants to come up with solutions. You guys are coming up with solutions, and I wish nothing but the best, man. What's the future look like for you guys? Is it just keep on moving, expanding? You want to be in all 50 states?
Well, look, so part of it's a fascinating question. I talk about this all the time with my board and with our alumni and with leaders within our organization across the spectrum. So, part of what we are focused on is we cannot lose the thing that we currently have, right? So there's a temptation sometimes, growth for the sake of growth, or mission creep, right? Like we are really, really good at what we do. There's always
got to be able to grow with the growth, right?
Right, exactly. Right. So
I've been in things that grow faster than the actual people supporting it, right, and then it turns to shit.
It's got to stay in step, right? So nurturing the thing that we have and that judicious growth, so that it's never something where we're adding something and have to cut back for lack of funding or something like that. And at the same time, not being comfortable only in that zone, right? But like actually pushing ourselves. So what I mentioned with on demand, this is a new modality of our program. It might fail, right? I don't think it will. We've done our due diligence. We have an incredible education team. We have the right partners, right? We have all these things moving in the right places. But at the same time, it might fail. But guess what? We're going to try it, right? Because like I said, the thing that literally keeps me up at night is for all the hundreds of people that we've served, for the thousands of people that we served, right? Incredibly proud of that. We need to keep growing that. But what about all the other people that aren't making those informed choices? So we're going to do something. We're going to try something there with on demand. We're going to assess the results. If it works, we're going to reinforce it. If it doesn't work, well, guess what? We're going to go back to the drawing board. We're going to find something that does.
Outstanding. No failure. You already know what failure looks like.
I do.
And you know what to keep fighting looks like. So
that's right.
But hey, brother, once again, man, I appreciate you coming on, taking the time to talk about your experiences, what you got going on, and appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you for you continuing to serve our community as well. But thank you so much, bro. And if you ever want to come back on and you have more stuff and you guys are growing and you want to keep talking about it, totally always have a seat here, brother.
Well, I appreciate that. I can give you the update a year from now, maybe, and say, all right, well, on demand worked or it totally flopped, and here's what I learned along the way. So, no, I appreciate the platform. I really respect, your approach to this and what you've done with this show. And thank you so much for having me on and letting me speak about Warrior Scholar Project.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, once again, brother, and we'll see you, man.
All right. See ya.
All right, friends and family. That wraps up another great interview. And my gosh, it has been one crazy season too. I've had amazing guests on, just like Ryan. A lot of Marines this season, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just because I'm a Marine doesn't mean that it has to be Marine specific, even though they're just the best around. But yeah, just keep watching the show, get caught up. Don't let it. There's like over 106 interviews you guys can watch. I told my life story in like 25 episodes. You guys check that out if you guys can make it through it. But otherwise, I hope you guys are having an amazing day. You know what we say on the show: don't let the day kick your ass, but make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time, we'll see you guys. Arr.